specialize in bringing AI products to market. What makes launching an AI product fundamentally different from launching any other SaaS product?
hmm Honestly, the launch process isn't that different. So you still have to have positioning, you still have to have sales enablement, you still have to have a homepage refresh, the demo, the comms, the PR, all of that stuff in the process is still the same. And they're the standard launch motions. What actually changes, in my opinion, is the messaging, and that's where. If we want to call it AI launches, really break from the normal SaaS launch. And the reason is, I think, uh, basically, if you would have asked this question 2 years ago, would have been completely different answer. But the market has matured. So 2 years ago, I think AI powered earned you a demo. So people they were drawn to those two words. Today, it really earns you an eye roll, including myself. So every time I hear someone in a positioning or in, saying that we're going to launch a new product and how do we want to talk about it? And they're like, let's just say it's AI. I understand why they're saying it, but it really, I feel like we're losing a true opportunity there because AI powered right now, I mean, not right now, it's always been the how. And the buyer doesn't need the how anymore because it's not exciting anymore. As like I said, 2 years ago, um, we were saying things that are possible, and because they were just so out of the ordinary, everyone was like, "How?" And that's where those two words became very important. But everyone by now already knows that AI means faster, it means more accurate, and it means cheaper at scale. So it's really table stakes right now. Um, so as I said, AI powered and using that in in your messaging and in your H1 title on launch day, I really do think that it's just using the most expensive piece of real estate, which is your homepage, to tell the buyer something that they already assumed. So going back to what I think messaging um, should be like today, even when we're launching AI products, is that we should actually talk and lead with the what. What does this product do? What is a decision that it removes from the buyer? What is a 3-day workflow that is now 10 minutes? What goes in, what goes out? And what's at stake if the buyer gets that wrong. So this is the messaging that a launch should focus on and lead with the what, not the category. And just a fun note on that, because I think uh, things are also going to continue changing with agentic, obviously, because that's the new hype word. Right
Yeah.
now, we said AI powered was the hype word. Now it's going to be agentic. And I think what we also have to take in mind now that we are product marketing people that are gonna be putting our agents on the market is that, again, messaging in the launch here is gonna be very important, and it's again different from what it was before and what traditional AI was bringing to the market. So traditional AI gives the buyer the output, so the read, a score, a forecast. Then you had generative AI, which was the thing on the market, which was the content to consume, a draft, an answer. Um, and now with agentic AI, this is basically where you're telling the buyer that you will now be able that the agent will be able to do the action for you. So all of that is the important bits the buyer should know when they're reading what you've launched on the market.
Absolutely. I think I saw your post also on agentic and actually I like the way you broke it down. It was quite insightful actually that, this is a new buzzword and I think you put feature, product and all the simplifications behind it.
Well, and I think the important thing here to understand is that, as I said, the reader and the buyer has become much more educated, and they can read through the fluff. And the fluff meaning fluff is also a hype word,
New
right?
word, yeah.
AI powered, intelligent, next generation, transformative, revolutionary, all of these big words that sound very cool but actually mean nothing. I think, as I said before, it's a waste. It's wasting space in your launch.
Absolutely. That brings me to my next question that, you've been named a top 100 PMM influencer, but influence and actual client results are two very different things. How do you make sure that one leads to the other?
Mhm. So, I mean, for me, being named a top 100 influencer isn't a vanity number. It's really validation that what I'm putting out there is actually landing with the people that actually do the work that I do as well. And I think that's the most important thing for me.
You've been named a top 100 PMM influencer, but influence and actual client results are two very different things. So, how do you make sure one leads to the other?
Mhm. Um, so as I was saying, for me, being named a top influencer isn't vanity. It's validation and um of how I've decided to show up in this world, and that what I'm putting out there is landing with the people that are actually doing the work that I'm doing as well, and that's what matters for me. Um, and the validation, and to make sure that this is not only validation and that it actually leads to something and and influences actual clients. I think the most important thing is making sure that the content, the content you're sharing is real. And I think
Yeah.
that's what most people are getting wrong. And what I mean here is that, um, so I mean, right now, if you scroll on a LinkedIn feed, you'll see a lot of AI generated takes, prompted insights, tidy frameworks, all of that stuff, which I think, if we've tried to like read through it long enough, we can really tell that it's AI generated, which I think is also harming the art.
Yes.
What I do, and I think what helps me and also has led into this um, um, category of being an influencer, is that I do story time. I call it story time because this is something that I do on a reflection myself as well. So usually, what I do and um, what I share on LinkedIn and what I share with my clients as well, it's the same stories, but it's usually something that I've experienced that week or that month that has led to a learning. So I try to package that into a post, not only for the audience on LinkedIn, but believe it or not, I also use those resources as my own artifact for the future, right? So I put something together that I learned through this process, a story time, something that came up in a positioning workshop, something that went wrong during a lunch. This is an actual story time and a real experience that I've gone through, and by putting it on LinkedIn, or but generally by sharing it with the world, I think the most interesting thing that happens, and I think, also being an influencer is just a byproduct, but the most interesting thing that happens is that you you put it on a feedback loop is created. So you put it on LinkedIn, then you have other product marketing managers that interact with that. They actually say, this is how I resolved it, or they disagree, or they agree, reaffirm. So there's this like, insanely amazing interaction that takes place then on LinkedIn. And I think that helps all of us become better and make sure that we apply those changes the next time we do a workshop, the next time um, we launch a product, the next time we build a messaging framework. And that's the result that the actual client gets thereafter. And what I really love about the product marketing network in general, I feel that because at least in Europe, it's a rather new function. I think in the US, it's been around for definitely for decades. In Europe, it's something that's really starting to grow right now. Nonetheless, I think the importance of product marketing managers. So these are we face similar problems. So coming together and being able to discuss these problems or realizations together, so that we can then take it back, um, take some time to reflect and produce the next time we produce a the next time we produce an artifact, make it better. That's a result of this collective learning and upskilling that we're doing together.
So AI is moving faster than any GTM can keep up with. How do you build messaging for a product that might look completely different in, say, 6 months?
Yeah. This is honestly one of the biggest mistakes I see right now. So people writing messaging for the products and not the actual buyer job. And I think that's also the reason why we get messaging wrong. The reason why this matters is that the buyer's job moves much slower than the actual model does. So take, for example, a customer support team. The job function and the job hasn't fundamentally changed. They still need to resolve tickets quickly. They still need to keep their customers happy. They still need to protect renewal rates. But in the products that we see for customer support teams, the AI underneath the workflow is what's being swapped. And this could happen multiple times in a year. What we get wrong in the messaging is that the buyer actually doesn't really care about that. They care about the job that's being done, not the model. Um, so the way that I think about messaging in this case is in two layers. I usually have the top layer is always the buyer's job, and that's locked in for the year. That's where your brand budget goes. That's your homepage, H1. That's your category bit, and that's also the line that the CEO should be repeating in every podcast and every keynote. And the bottom layer is the capability. That's actually the product detail. So, this is something that you can allow your team to rewrite freely every quarter as the product evolves, because the model is changing, the product is changing, you're launching new something. That's fine. Um, but what kills companies is when they mix up those 2 things. So they put the model name or the framework name in their H1, for example. And when they do that, then they'll find themselves in a situation where 6 months later they change something again. They need to replace and they change, then do a whole new website relaunch, a whole new website rewrite. And this happens every 6 months. So basically for me, uh, building messaging based on these 2 layers, is the way that I go about it, because the job layer should stay constant, and it's fine just to, swap the model layer as the product, evolves. We have to oftentimes, and it's only natural, but we have to, like, pull ourselves out of the equation, because um sometimes we're messaging for ourselves or for our egos because we get really excited, and that's not a bad thing. It's just we're only
Yeah.
humans, right? We get really excited
Yes.
about thing that we not we hacked something, but that we um cracked the code on something, that we were able to achieve something, that something is completely new to the way that your product has formed. So that's interesting to you and to your team and to the force your team carries. But we always have to remember that at the end of the day, they're not the ones that are buying the product. And I think it sounds really simple, but but the amount of times we slip into that, habit of saying, "But we're not saying this, and this is really cool, and this is like, this is like really cutting edge, and if only they knew that in order for this to happen, this, and this, and this happens." I'm like, "That's all great." But
It's
it's
absolutely relatable, actually, what you're saying. The
no,
internal team conflict.
No, and I mean, and that's why, sometimes you just need to bear the cross in that meeting, say like, congratulations, and pat ourselves on the back, because it's really amazing the products um that we're putting on the market, but putting all of those words in your messaging is not the place. We should have like an internal meeting, a celebration, we should cut a cake, we should be very proud of ourselves, but that's not the messaging. You don't have to put all of those words in your messaging framework and your positioning.
Yes, and that's so relatable. Even we face this every time that this is really clicking, but then we're like, okay, no, let's leave it because it doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah. And I actually recently had a workshop, a positioning workshop, which is, tied, what's going to be our GTM. And I think also an interesting note here, with all of these new tools on the market, AI tools, I mean, that we're also using internally, but also using them to build. I think right now, um, a lot, if a really big percentage, I don't have the source or the citation to be very specific here, but I bet a really big percentage right now of companies are repositioning. Um, and I was recently hosting a positioning workshop, and my heart goes out to everyone that has, I said, as I get said, been through the whole thick and thin of a lot of launches, of a lot of pivots, of a lot of, moves and GTM moves that the company has had to make because of market dynamics, right? Um, and I just, I as we were talking, I just remembered very clearly I had to like stress that just because we decide to take a positioning that means this GTM move, it doesn't mean that we stop being all of these other things or these stop being important to us. They're just not the first thing that we want to shine the light on. So I think also understanding that, but again, it's really hard to let go, and I understand that, and it's a process. So, but
Absolutely. Yes. That's that's so right actually. And it's so relatable because I think every team is facing this right now.
yeah, definitely
Yeah. So
interesting
most
time.
yes. So most B2B SaaS companies say they keep things simple, but the GTM tells a completely different story. Where does the complexity actually creep in, according to you?
It's a real gap, right? Yeah, I mean, um, companies say they're simple, and then GTM is anything but simple. And before, I mean, I have three specific things in mind where I think complexity actually creeps in. But there's one thing that I definitely want to say before I get to that, which we tend to confuse. And I'm going to go back to messaging actually. Companies think that because their products are complex on the inside, the messaging has to be complex as well. Or because um, the buyer is, a enterprise buyer, and each deal is worth six figure, seven-figure deal, that by being complex is what justifies that deal number that's going to be on the actual contract. And I just think that's just wrong. Um, your product can be as complex as it technically needs to be, and I think most B2B products are. But the job of a product marketing manager has to be that you take away this complexity, and that this complexity doesn't show up in your messaging. And your messaging or your positioning or sales conversation. So we have to remove all of it from all of those three places. So when complexity is leaking in the GTM, that's not a product problem. I think that's a um, product marketing problem. And to be fair, because I've also experienced this many times, it's I don't wanna be absolute, but usually it's because you have a lot of interference in the work of a product marketing a marketeer, and you're not able to, remove this complexity. But that's what it is, and I just wanna name it for what it is because I think that's the root cause underneath, what comes next, which for me is that I think that complexity in GTM appears in 3 specific places, and the good thing is that all of them are really fixable, so it's really up to the organization to decide whether or not they're gonna remove that complexity. And the first place for me is one of my favorite places, and one of the favorite conversations that I have is the homepage navigation. Just open any B2B SaaS homepage, and you look at the top, and you have products, solutions, products, platform, capabilities, you name it. So By the time the buyer finds what they're actually looking for, they've already done, 5 to 6 clicks of taxonomy that the company should have done internally before the page was ever shipped. Um, so the rule I use is that if your navigation has more than 4 tabs, that's not a UX problem. You have a positioning problem, and the UX just has made it much more visible and has exposed it. So that's the first thing. Usually you're kind of like, oh, but we have this. Where are we going to put that? Throw that there under this drop down until we figure it out. But again, let's call things for what they are. The second place is the demo. So usually there we have either product managers or solution consultants that, again, as I said, because they are talking about their babies, they're talking about what they've shipped, and they're very proud, as they should be. But then you go into this discussion and into this habit of sharing everything that your product has, which is drop down to like a feature demo, and you're 20 minutes into your demo and your buyer has seen 40 different features, and if you're lucky they remember two. Sometimes you're just so confused because of the complexity.
Yeah.
Because you're also using very big words to again justify the big number that you want to say at the end of the call and all of that stuff. um, and again, they're not going to remember anything, and this is another place where your positioning dies very quietly and not nobly at all, in my opinion. And the third place is a brutal one, but again, we need to call it for what it is. And this is a positioning problem. So I think this is a test that any product marketing manager has done probably in their company. You usually first month in working with a company or first week in, you're gonna go to your C level, and individually you're gonna want to ask your CEO, your CPO, your CRO, your CTO separately, but to describe what the company actually does in one sentence. And you pray and you hope that those responses are going to converge or have some some common themes. If you're lucky, it does. If you're not, you understand that that's showing up across the GTM organization itself, and the prospects can feel it. They can feel it on the website, they can feel it in the demo, they feel it everywhere. So I think that's the first, the easiest, and a free test that you can run in the organization. It's quite brutal when you recognize that, but as I said, all three of these things are things that I think add to company complexity, and they're all fixable. So that's that's the good news.
Absolutely. I think complex people make the products so complex, but when they come on the homepage, I don't know why they don't understand that it has to be simple.
Yeah,
The number one biggest task I also see is that to make the founder understand that it's okay if it is not complex.
yeah,
It has
no,
to be simple. The person
definitely,
has to understand in one sentence that what you do.
yeah.
Otherwise, it won't make any sense.
No, no, definitely. And something that's that's normally really funny is I typically have really good relationships also with a very technical um product managers or engineers, and oftentimes because I do really want to highlight their work, and I'm sure there's usually um things in their work that uh that could be a differentiator that you wanna use in your messaging and positioning, right? But oftentimes you have, engineers and, technical product managers that, they see that you've booked a meeting with them, and they're like, "Ugh, what does this person want again? They're probably not gonna understand what I do, la da 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 da, it's very complicated, it's very technical, let me try to explain it to you, but I don't think it's anything that, anyone can understand," right? So I actually recently had another one of these calls where we had one of these meetings, and I have an engineer explaining something to me, and I'm just listening, taking notes. And at the end of the call, there's just like, I'm finishing my last sentence, and I just say, "So basically, it's this, this, and that, and they get this." And he's just like, Yes. And I'm like, "Well, cool," because that's and then I tell them, "This is insanely cool. There's definitely something that we like, why we should totally flip this into our this is a differentiator. We should highlight this."
Mhm.
And they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay." So also breaking this misconception that, what happens below the surface is something that is so technical. It is complex. I don't want to under no circumstances undermine the work that they do. But there is a way where you can really boil it down and explain. There has to be a way. I mean, how would you explain it to, going home every day to a young child what you did? There's definitely a way that you can say that where people can understand, even if they're not very much aware with the terms and all of the nitty-gritty details of what's happened.
Absolutely. I think when you crack it and that wow moment, that is also like really amazing when the whole team is like, "Oh yes, this is something that that should be going out."
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think also um the technical people and the engineers um get excited about that because you kind of
Yes.
basically tell them and reaffirm that what they're building is amazing and it means something to someone. You just have to communicate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said that most teams treat win-loss like therapy. Everyone wins, but nothing changes. So what does a win-loss analysis that actually change something look like?
So let me also begin by saying that win loss for me is one of my favorite topics. And I think um win-loss and launching a win-loss program as a product marketeer, and as a founding product marketeer, i.e., you're the first product marketing person in a company and you kind of have to establish yourself. You have to educate what the team of the value of product marketing and the work of product marketing. Many times also saying, the difference between product marketing and marketing. So I think win-loss and launching win-loss programs is a very uh, quick or easy not it's not easy, but it's a very quick way to prove, impact, and to prove impact fast, and be like, "Huh," and people start seeing you a little bit differently. Why? Because if it's done right, it should, end up, um, with an action and a change that the organization can feel. And if it doesn't, that means that it's been a therapy session or that it's been a very nice, feedback session and we kind of all have taken our time to like mourn a deal that we've lost or celebrated a deal that we've won, but it will just stay standing. It will no learning will come out of it. No outcome will come out of it. And I think that's um that's where a really big opportunity is lost. So for me, win-loss that's done right should obviously the obvious KPI that it affects is win rates. But even before we get there, you have a lot of outputs that can be created that at one point in time could potentially affect the win rate. So making sure that you um collect that feedback and you do an analysis that leads to actions is for me key. And in order to do that, also there are some things that you just have to make sure that you do in a win-loss program. So for me, the first thing and a number one rule is you shouldn't have someone running win-loss interviews. Anyone that's been part of the sales process shouldn't be running a win-loss interview because that automatically means that you're probably gonna have a bias or you're gonna have the the buyer or the prospect not feeling comfortable to share everything potentially, right? Sometimes you
Yeah.
have people that share things freely. Um, but even in times where I had an AE receive feedback from a deal that was lost and detailed feedback. When I went in alone, I also uncovered things that weren't uncovered by the AE, and that's not a bad thing. That's just again, good people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, and that's a
Yeah.
good thing. So number one rule is that an AE, an SDR, solution consultant shouldn't be doing the win loss interview If you have the budget, you actually outsource these to a third party to make sure that it happens in a neutral manner. If you don't, um, you can. This is something that usually runs within the product marketing function, but you can also train other people to follow a script um, in order to do that, and make sure that the interview and the input that you're going to get from the buyer, from the prospect, is going to be unbiased, and it's something that you can actually do with it. So that's the first thing. The second thing to make sure that it's not, a therapy session, is to make sure that it happens continuously and it's not seasonal. Uh, Depending on how long your sales cycles are, typically speaking, well, I usually have win-loss programs that run it on 2 tracks. So you have the continuous win-loss where you have, every quarter, or every 6 months, as I said, depending on how long, the sales cycle is. You look at what deals have been won, what deals have been lost, and you engage in a win-loss cycle. I also have, um a second track, which is the ad hoc track, where something has happened that has shocked the organization, but it has happened multiple times, and there's a pattern, and you want to ad hoc create a loop to discover something very specific. So on the one hand, on the continuous um, track, you're not looking for anything very specific. You're trying to have an open mind, open space to uncover patterns and see things that you can tweak to improve your conversions across um, the sales cycle. In the other track, in the ad hoc track, something has, as I said, shocked the organization, and you're going in to research something very specific that needs to change immediately, probably. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but all of a sudden you're seeing, for example, let's not always take the bad scenario, that you're getting a lot of new deals and wins from a vertical that you hadn't been, reaching out to or positioning for, or even you didn't have on your radar, but all of a sudden you have a new vertical, and that has come very strongly um in your pipeline, and the conversion is very good. So they're saying, do I have a vertical or a revenue stream here that I didn't examine? What am I seeing here? Is my product also la da da da, fill in the gaps, right? So there's also good things that want you to, before you make that big change, or you decide that you're going to also be building for a new buyer, you need to like research it. So um that's the learning there. So number one, no one from the sales process should be in the interview. Number two, make it continuous, but also have, if you have the capacity and the resources, have those ad hoc loops as well, because those are opportunities that you should um just let go pass freely. And the third thing is that make sure that everything finds an owner. So, for example, when you're there presenting your win-loss analysis and the feedback, and you propose XYZ changes, we're getting this feedback on pricing, and this is something that needs to go to finance, or to the pricing squad that is creating. So whatever the outcome is and the actions that you're proposing are, they should always have an owner, so it actually changes.